Hi everybody, I hope you're well. Hopefully you can hear me. Can somebody just give a thumbs up or something just to let me know that I'm coming through? I've done a few of these sessions where the technology's not quite worked. So if you can give me a thumbs up or chuck something in the chat or say hello or whatever you want to do, that would be phenomenal. Maybe something's amiss. Very good. Thank you very much. Perfect. Well, welcome to this session. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Allen. We're going to record this session to make it more widely available as well. It's obviously this session is called "How is COVID-19 affecting internship and or graduate recruitment?" I mean, obviously we're in the UK. Hopefully things are looking more promising for what with the rollout of the vaccine and restrictions being lifted, but undoubtedly COVID in the last 16 months has definitely affected things from the perspective of internship opportunities and graduate recruitment. Throw that into the mix, and we also have obviously Brexit in the UK happened the 1st of January, and that's going to affect things slightly in the longer term, slightly more than COVID in the longer term, of course. So yes, I suppose the overall theme to this session is going to be that, and feel free to stick around for the rest of it, of course, but the overall theme to this session is that things are definitely improving from a recruitment perspective, and they'll continue to improve. It's predicted that they'll continue to improve, and there's a lot to be optimistic about. But ultimately, we are not 100% recovered yet, and that's going to take a while. So that's the overall theme to things. And I suppose from our perspective, or certainly from my perspective, I was a careers consultant and have been for years. I was a careers consultant back in 2008 when there was the huge credit crunch. And what happened then compared to what happened now is quite notable, really. Back then in 2008, employers essentially for 1 year just got rid of all their recruitment. They stopped taking on graduates, they stopped taking on interns in so many sectors, some kind of finance and engineering, like completely. And it was a tough time for Imperial students at the time. I suppose what the lessons learned from 2008 from a recruitment perspective, particularly for larger organizations, was that what they found from that experience is that because they didn't take anybody on in the graduate level, in future years, whereas from year to year they expect their graduates to get promoted, to move on in their careers and contribute as they move up through the company. That just didn't happen. There's a massive gap where they didn't take people on. And so the good news, but the different approach this time for the pandemic, once in a century pandemic, is that a lot of employers were switched on to that, and so the numbers of opportunities dropped, but they didn't cull them completely. There are still opportunities out there. They're very keen to get things moving again as things restrictions lift and that sort of thing. So it's better now than it was back in 2008, and things are going to continue to improve. So this session, I've already talked through a lot of it already. We're going to talk you through some specific labour market information. I say I'm going to talk you through some specific labour market information. And the idea of this session really is to give evidence rather than just rumour of the trends and predictions that are happening in the recruitment space. And this evidence comes from a variety of experts, and it's intended to inform you of the situation, to give you a sort of deeper basis of knowledge around it. So it hopefully will make a little bit more sense and give you some more context. We're going to look a little bit about what employers are telling us through a couple of direct kind of interactions that we've had with employers, actually, but also through professional organizations like the Institute of Student Employment, which is a big organization that almost all of the larger recruiters in the UK are members of, and they are often surveyed by the ISE, as they're called, in order to give us a picture of what's going on. So we're going to give you insight into that. We're going to talk a little bit about what information, what this means for you as individuals. Yeah, and you'll obviously have a chance at the end to ask any questions you might want. This is an hour session, but it's not going to take an hour. I'm going to run through these slides about the next 10, 15 minutes, and then you can ask any questions that you wish. So just to give a basis, you'll probably know this already, but labour market information is it's when you kind of gather data from a range of sources to get a sort of broader context of what's happening in the world of work, both kind of from a local perspective, kind of London-centric, and also nationally. We're not going in this session, we're not talking internationally at all, but certainly that's what we're looking at, and that's what labour market information is, and it helps us to understand where you stand, what the opportunities might be, and also what skills and demands employers have presently, how that's changing and how that might change in the future. So it might come from a range of sources, this labour market information. We're very, very lucky in the university sector that we are supported quite heavily by a number of kind of non-profit organisations that are there to give guidance and information to universities to help us perform at our best, if you like. And so a lot of the information that comes from in this session comes actually from one of these key sources for the university sector, which is Prospects Illuminate. Now, what that is there's this man is a legend in our sector, Charlie Ball. He's head of higher education intelligence, essentially. He works for an organization called, you don't need to know this, but I'm giving you some context. He works for an organization called JISC, who support HE. And he's worked for many organizations in that sector like Hexu and Prospects. And what they're doing at the moment, Charlie and a number of his colleagues are there, they're churning out on a weekly basis the latest labour market information from such resources as the Office of National Statistics, you know, that government organization, or as I mentioned, the Institute of Student Employers. We liaise with the ISE directly, but Charlie does it very well, pulls out the key information and saves us a lot of effort, as well as other organizations like consultancies and professional associations. So I'm going to run through a lot of stuff from different organizations, but a lot of it, the credit must go to Charlie and his team. Overall, the weekly Illuminate presentations have been saying this for quite a few months, and it's kind of turning out that that's right. The predictions for this year, as things improve from a pandemic perspective, we've known for a while that it's predicted that the recovery, kind of in general, and from a recruitment of students perspective, is going to be led, and it's starting to be led by smaller and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, as it says there. And the rationale for that is because smaller and medium-sized enterprises tend to be a bit more flexible and agile, and they often take a little bit more kind of risks and this kind of stuff, rather than a sort of more, lumbering's the wrong word, but a larger kind of blue chip international organization. And we're sort of starting to see that with advertised positions now, that SMEs are kind of leading the way at trying to recruit our students. And it's predicted that larger organizations, those big international blue chip, you kind of, whether it be your Rolls-Royce, BP, GSK, whatever it is, those sorts of organizations are predicted to start or kickstart their recruitment kind of later in the year, the second half of this year. Yeah, so a little bit of a lag with them. In terms of the shortage areas for skills needed by SMEs and by larger organizations, ultimately, you may not be surprised that they're pretty consistent: social care, education, and engineering and IT, which is good news for a lot of our students. Just going back to that SME thing, there was a report last week that, so this SME prediction by Illuminate, I think we first started hearing about it in January, February, that it was this SMEs were going to start their kind of recovery May, June, July, and that's really backed up. There was a LinkedIn report last week. They do a sort of LinkedIn work, they have created and maintain a LinkedIn Workforce Confidence Index. And what that means is they reach out to professionals in different organizations of different sizes and kind of ask them about how they feel their business is going, how their recruitment is going. And in the last 3 months, there's been a huge boost in the confidence index for people who work in SMEs. And they're giving sort of reasons for why they're feeling confident about recruitment, about their business in general. But ultimately, it's due to two main things: the pandemic waning away, and the fact that that has had an effect on the performance and the opportunities for their organization. Moving on down the list of things here, virtual recruitment is here to stay. That's some prediction that is holding true. So a lot of recruitment went from being, in-person assessment centers and interviews to being all online through Zoom, Teams, or whatever platform employers were using. And the more we talk to employers and the ISE, the Institute of Student Employers body, the more it seems that not that many organizations are going to go fully back to how things were. There will always be an element of virtual recruitment, whether that be the interview, even group work assessments, may be here to stay, certainly for some organizations. So that's something to think about. And just some trends that have been happening for years, actually. Non-linear careers will become more popular, it's predicted as well. Now, in the old days, like my dad worked for a company for sort of 35 years in a similar role and worked his way up and up. And that has been, in the last 15 years, it's become more and more common to change sector, change job several times during your career. And it's kind of predicted that with as things progress with AI and with just the new jobs that are created due to technology, that this is going to be a more popular trend moving forward, increasingly popular. As I say at the bottom here, formal internships and placements will take longer to recover in terms of opportunity. Now, what that means, so I should make a big point here, smaller and medium-sized enterprises, because they're leading the recruitment, that's great. Having said that, often they don't advertise their positions as freely as your big blue chip companies who have a structured recruitment process, know they're going to take on 200 interns this year and 200 graduates and that sort of thing. Smaller and medium-sized firms, in order for you to maximize your chance of getting the best job for you this year, you need to be thinking about the fact that some of them, SMEs, often don't advertise on target jobs or even jobs live. They sometimes rely on you contacting them directly through speculative applications or through networking, through speaking to people in the organization directly and finding out what their opportunities might be. 70% of jobs in the UK in general are not advertised, and SMEs, it's even more the case because they don't have the huge budgets to spend money advertising roles on expensive websites like Target Jobs and the like. So your strategy this year should be, at this stage, where are we? We're in May just. If you haven't done so already, to start finding those companies, doing your research and contacting them directly, or liaising with alumni who work in companies that might interest you using LinkedIn and the like. So that's where you should be coming from. All right, I'm going to flick through a few slides now. I've talked quite a lot already, but just a quick thing about the fact that the McKinsey report for future of work after COVID-19 suggests that due to the pandemic and due to aging populations in the UK as well, and hopefully the fact that incomes are going to rise, the sorts of roles and services needed mean that STEM occupations in technology, medicine and the like are likely to grow disproportionately compared to other sectors. So that's kind of good news. Going on to some specific information, you can see we got it from Luminate, by the way, but you can go and look at this report as well. McKinsey obviously have an excellent research element of their business for this kind of thing. The Institute of Student Employers, so again, that's the organization that represents large, big recruiters that you will be well aware of generally. They predict that things are going to improve to normal in the UK somewhere around 2022, 2023. So as things are improving this year, as I said at the beginning, we're not there yet, but things are looking more positive but it won't be until the year after 2022 and maybe 2023 that things are back to normal. As it says here, for the larger organizations, vacancy levels for graduate roles are predicted to be about 2/3 of what they were. And that's in complete contrast, as I said, to 2008, when it was something like 1/5 of what they were. So bear that in mind. And also this sector, and what I mean by this sector, the university sector, the kind of graduate and professional level, entry level sort of level, is faring very well disproportionately to other areas of the labour market. So less well paid roles where you need less qualifications have suffered more. And that's not something to be smug about, but it is something that's kind of reassuring from where we are, of course. And it shows the sectors that there have been recent increases in recruitment noises, and with some evidence recently as well. So manufacturing, construction, IT, engineering. Obviously, a lot of Imperial students are interested in finance and banking and accountancy and this kind of thing, and of course, healthcare. So there's a few things to be positive about. Some industries are going to take a while to recover. We're thinking like arts and media. That less reflects a lot of what our students want to go into, but is worth being aware of. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research is a think tank that is the UK's oldest think tank working in the economic area, if you like, and they've kind of upped their prediction for economic growth in the UK, which of course has an impact on jobs and recruitment, saying that this year things are going to improve by 5.7%, whereas previously back in February they only thought it was going to be 3.4% in terms this year. Now, so that's very reassuring. They reckon the employment in general is not expected to get back to pre-pandemic levels until the end of 2023, but things are on the up. But they do a lot of sort of specific geographical analysis in terms of the UK, and they are predicting that London is going to do better than the rest of the UK in terms of employment levels, with a few areas unfortunately lagging behind. Northern Ireland and Wales, even by 2023, is still going to be a couple of percent behind. But in terms of Imperial students and where a lot of our graduates go, the fact that London's going to do very well is very useful. Okay, so moving on to the government statistics. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but it is worth noting that the ONS analyzes all kinds of stats that come from all kinds of places, and the value of having a degree has always been the case that unemployment levels are lower for graduates, and it's just the fact that even during the pandemic, unemployment levels for graduates for last year, Q3, was 4.6% for graduates, whereas for recent graduates, whereas for overall unemployment rate is 5.8%. Actually, sorry, no, that's not recent graduates, that's people with a degree in general. So there is value in having a degree. Yeah, graduate jobs. Oh yeah, and also interestingly, as it says here, graduate skill mismatch defined as the proportion of graduates not employed in graduate occupations decreased by 5 percentage points. So what that means is that graduates in that time ended up in higher level jobs on average. That you have to take that with a pinch of salt, because there are probably less opportunities in things like hospitality, where some graduates do initially end up before they kind of move on and up in their career. But in terms of the recent the most recent picture of recruitment in the UK, the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, which is it's a confederation of which represents recruitment consultancy. So you may or may not know, but a lot of the job market in the UK is almost run by recruitment consultants. That's not the case at the graduate level, where companies like often have very structured graduate sort of pipelining structures to get people into their organization. But moving on through your career, you may use a recruitment consultant when finding a new job moving forward, and this confederation represents that group of recruitment consultants organizations. But you can sort of see how the number of jobs being advertised with their members has increased, and this graph starts in March all the way up to last month, April, and you can see that things are steadily rising. And again, that's just echoing the impact of the vaccine rollout in the UK. So very useful. And the CIPD, which is a Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, so they organise a lot of professional qualifications and a lot of sort of training for management and certain sectors in particular. They are particularly optimistic, and they've seen that the proportion of organisations from there, because they run a survey with a recruitment consultant actually called Adecco, one of the largest recruitment consultants in the UK and internationally. They run a sort of survey, do some research about the labour market, which their May report showed that optimism among employers has leapt really, with 64% of organisations planning to recruit shortly. So that's good. That's obviously very good. So 2/3 of organisations recognise they're going to need more people. They've got more business, more stuff to do, and that's going to have a knock-on effect to you and your opportunities. Okay. Ultimately, the recruitment's it's increased a lot, and that's going to level off in time, but that's very good. And the proportion of employers intending to make redundancies, which happened a little bit, obviously, during the pandemic, even with the furlough scheme, is constantly falling. The CBI, which is the Confederation of British Industry and represents a lot of private businesses, or represents businesses in general, a lot of private businesses are sort of members. They have strong expectations for growth over the next 3 months, right? So they think that every sector is going to improve, which is great. And that's based on 671 responses from representing across different sectors of their membership. Just one other thing, which kind of like, how does this affect you, really? I suppose this is always going to happen, and it's been happening for years, that technology has become an increasing part of recruitment at the internship and graduate level. But it is worth, and as careers consultants, we're always talking to our students, whether in departments or in our central workshops, we're talking about the importance of networking or having a digital presence on things like LinkedIn, because, as I mentioned earlier, 70% of jobs are never advertised, and LinkedIn is a great way of having your information and your brand, if you like, kind of constantly present in the eye line of recruiters. And more recruiters every year use LinkedIn to find talent. And even recruiters who have very structured recruitment programs and will be coming to our engineering fairs and will be advertising through Jobs Live, often they've kind of backed that up by contacting students online and sort of saying, you look like a good fit for our blah 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 graduate scheme. And so so it's worth having a good presence on LinkedIn for that purpose, as well as the fact that you can network with alumni and find people in organizations that interest you and build relationships which can really open up opportunities. So it's more important than ever to have that presence on LinkedIn. And as I mentioned earlier, 91% of students have issues. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, sorry, I haven't looked at these slides for the last 24 hours. More and more video interviews are happening, and that's going to stay. But a lot of students don't like them. And I think that's kind of fair, especially the video interviews where technology asks you questions and then records your answers, because that is happening more and more. So this is from a nepotism report from Handshake, who are an organization that create a digital platform to help coordinate relationships between students and employers. So obviously they're going to talk up the fact that the digital is the way forward. So you have to be a little bit kind of pinch of salt about it. But it's kind of it's something that we've experienced, not just from hearing it from them. Okay, and like they say, 66% of employers that from their surveys say they're going to do more recruitment online. As mentioned earlier, advertised internships are down quite a lot. So do your networking, do your speculative applications with organizations. Go to LinkedIn, go to Imperial Alumni, So you go to Imperial College and click on alumni, and you've got a database of 125,000 graduates dotted around the world, actually, but loads of them are in the UK, that you can look by sector, by company, find out where they work geographically within the UK, and start building links with them directly. Use your professional bodies. If you're a chemist interested in pharma, then go to the professional body that represents pharmaceuticals in the UK, which is the ABPI, Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry, and look at the membership. And there's a list of companies you will have heard of, but often smaller and medium-sized pharma and biotech firms that you can find, look on their websites, send them a speculative CV kind of applications, or network with people in those organizations. And if you have that approach, it doesn't matter if you're into pharma or engineering or whatever it might be, there'll be a professional body or a directory where you can find companies and that you can strategically contact directly through either networking or speculative application means. Don't stop looking at advertised positions, never stop looking at jobs live, but do add those other strings to your bow, as we say, in order to maximize the chances of getting the role that you want. Okay. It is worth this final bullet point there. Employers are looking at different ways of offering experience. I know that a lot of job adverts that I've seen this year, whereas traditionally the summer internship started in sort of the end of June and went on for 3 months. I know I've seen a lot of employers who are offering sort of 2 or 3 weeks experience, paid experience, but it's going to be when their office is open later in the summer. So that's something to think about. Also, some employers, and this is a really sort of silver lining of the pandemic in general, because there were, with the larger companies in particular, a lot of their planned internships did stop last year, or planned graduate schemes were either deferred or stopped. A lot of the companies wanted to continue giving students an opportunity to experience what it's like to work in their industry, and so a lot of virtual internships are available. If you go to, you may have heard of this already, but there's a website called The Forage, Forage, which is a platform where a lot of larger organizations have put on virtual internships. So you've got engineering, you've General Electric, you've got law firms, you've got McKinsey's and Bain's and BCG's, you've got pharmaceutical industries, sort of specifically oil and gas companies, and lots of other commercial companies have put on these virtual internships through The Forage, and other platforms are available, but they're the biggest, where you can go along and you can subscribe. You don't have to apply, and you can. So I did a technology internship for JP Morgan, and it took about 6, or it would have taken about 6 hours. And there's a lot of videos, people introducing you to the company, people talking about technology, and then it gives you some tasks to do using kind of Python, which I could not do, but you sort of have to design a trading platform thing and then submit that. And so there's other ways of getting experience. Anyway, that's what I kind of use. There's also an organization called the Bright Network, which run a lot of virtual internships, so you can also look at that as well. But some of those you have to apply to, but that's kind of fine. I hope that's kind of useful. Moving forward, just for people who are interested in research and PhDs, it's worth noting that kind of post-Brexit, the UK has done deals on Horizons Europe to be part of that still, so there will be funding. So Horizons Europe is one of the largest funders of PhDs in the country, and it kind of trickles down through universities, and that's looking positive. That's not going to disappear. And the UK is expected to continue its participation in the Copernicus and Euratom research and training and ITER programs similarly, which kind of fund things around stuff like, from what I remember, nuclear research, and is Euratom, that kind of energy. Copernicus is more space agency stuff, European Space Agency. And ITER is the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor program. So that's going to continue. So there's a lot that's still going to be there in terms of opportunity. kind of moving forward, really, you just a few things to be aware of. Talked about the fact recruitment is going to be online more, and it's going to continue to be online even when COVID is a small part of your memory that there's something that happened ages ago. The recruitment windows, as I mentioned, might change as companies a bit later this year or very late in the year. More pre-recorded interviews, more online interviews. In terms of the work experience you may get in an internship, obviously there's a move to people having more hybrid work anyway in the UK. Hopefully that's going to pan out like that, as it's been proved that people can still be effective from working from home. The detrimental element of that from a perspective of somebody relatively new to the workplace at internship or graduate level, which might be you, is that you'll probably have less face-to-face time than you would have done a couple of years ago, which is a bit of a shame in a way, but there will be flexibility with a lot of roles where you can work, and even timing of work. All right. So, oh, and obviously this last point, just to bear in mind that group work during the recruitment processes, group work assessments, and this kind of stuff happen online. We run group work career labs that you can get involved with, that you can book through Jobs Live to get, if you haven't done so already, to get a flavour of what that might be like if you haven't experienced it yet. A couple of quick sort of things to mention. We have had some positive sort of noises coming from specific organisations, and so we have had large companies saying that they have jobs and are looking for graduates, so that's great news. And we have had smaller firms as well, sort of showing real interest, and that's just going to get better, that picture in general. So specifically for you, it's good in general. As I said at the beginning, this whole session is to hopefully paint a picture of how things are improving. They're not as good as they were. It'll take a while to get there, but things are looking more positive. There are jobs out there. You just may have to be more creative in finding them through using networking and speculative applications on top of looking at advertised positions. Yeah, and I think it's always worth thinking about the fact that think about all your options, think about getting a plan B. It might be that because there are less opportunities, that maybe you won't necessarily be able to get the specific job with the specific company you want this time, but you can think about how you might get there in 1 year or 2 years time, starting somewhere else to gain experience that you can then use to build towards what at the moment you really want. Okay, so plan Bs, make sure you have some considered what they might be. Okay, and just some other points to think about. We have a section on our website which has been phenomenally well created and updated by colleagues of mine, not me, I've got to say, where we have a lot of information around COVID into Q&A, lots of links for further information, resources that you may find useful. As I mentioned, I can't talk about the use of Jobs Live, Jobs Live, but also LinkedIn enough in this sort of networking and finding out where people are working through the alumni tool, and in getting your own message out there enough, really. But just one side note, I don't think you ever really need to buy the paid for version of LinkedIn. The functionality is not much better than the free version, but do make good use of the free version. And one last point as well with regard to finding companies is that Jobs Live has a company directory of over 5,000 companies, employers essentially, on there who have actively signed up to being in that directory, and we've sort of, I think it was reviewed last year to ensure that all the companies were valid and current. So you can always use that to find company, and you can search by company size, geographically, sector, I think keyword as well. From what I understand, because your view of Jobs Live is different to mine, it's in the main search bit, is a quote from our information manager. The main search bit you can use to find, just to go through those 5,000 companies and find those that may be of interest to you, and then maybe use that as a starting point to network, speculatively apply, etc. And lastly, just make sure you make the most of this summer. Virtual internships. Go to our career fair next week on Wednesday to see the employers who are presently recruiting. Go use our other career essentials sessions like job hunting in a recession, or the interviews one, or the applications one, or the CV one as well. And feel free to use us in one-to-ones as well. And you book all of those things via Jobs Live. And very, very lastly, and then I'll let you get a word in edgeways if you have any questions. If you are looking to apply abroad, obviously we're a bit restricted in terms of movements at the moment, but things are always subject to change depending on country and everything else. If you are interested in applying outside the UK, we have great starting points in that Going Global is a sort of database. It's a website that we pay for that has information about like the required labor market information for different countries. So you can find also the expectations of what an application might look like, because CVs look very different from country to country. And there's got a fantastic company database internationally. I think they must link or get the data from sort of the individual countries version of what in the UK we have is Company House, which is where all businesses are registered. And so if you're interested in finding automotive organizations in Spain, because that's where you want to work and that's what you want to, where the sort of thing you want to do, you can find all the companies in Spain who work in the automotive sector. So it can be very useful. For questions on visas and immigration, the International Student Support Office are your go-tos. They run a lot of presentations and workshops on the changes in visas. And this last link is a link to 10 things graduates should know from the Target Jobs website. And that relates to the changes and developments since COVID-19 came into our lives. Okay, that's the end of my slides. I recognize I've just talked at you for sort of 39 minutes, but if you have any questions, please feel free to put them either in the chat or to turn your mic on and ask me directly. What I am going to do at this stage, though, is I am going to stop the recording. So if you're watching this on the recording, thanks very much for watching this on the recording, and I hope you found it useful. Okay, perfect.